Hi everybody, my name is Hannah, this is Pepper and Pine, and I have a chemistry demonstration to share with you today. We have been inspired by this book called Chemistry the Waldorf Way for grades 7 and 8, and while today's demonstration isn't specifically found in this book, it is inspired by a demonstration that we did recently on chemical and physical changes, and we did an exothermic demonstration, an exothermic reaction using sodium hydroxide, which is lye, and water. So in doing the chemical change, a release of heat, or our exothermic reaction, I also was looking at ones that were endothermic reactions. And we had previously done the very typical chemistry demonstration of mixing vinegar with baking soda, which is often used mistakenly in geology or earth science classes, just because it's so much fun to do with a volcano, but really it belongs in a chemistry lab. And so we're going to be doing this reaction again in order to measure, if anything, there is a temperature difference once the two, the baking soda and the vinegar are mixed. I also have plaster of Paris, and we're going to mix plaster of Paris with water and also check the temperature to see if that is an endo or exothermic reaction. I have my digital thermometer and a beaker. I also have some measuring utensils and a scale. We don't really need them specifically for this one. So we're not going to be mixing these two in the proportion that's going to cause a reaction so that all of the either the baking soda or the vinegar is used up. We are just doing this enough so that we can measure a temperature difference. So we're gonna do a beaker, and I really don't want this overflowing because we really just wanna measure a difference in temperature. So I'm gonna maybe do 200 mils. And then we're going to measure the temperature. So that's about 67 degrees. I'll leave that in there. And then we're going to do probably maybe 1/8 of a cup. I think this is a 1/4 cup. No, maybe this is a 1/2 cup. Let me see. This is 1/3 of a cup. So we will do a little bit less. So it's about 1/6 of a cup. And let's keep this. So now it shows 66.7. Oh no, there it goes. So we have 64.82. Okay, so we're down to about 60. Oh, 59. It keeps going. And the temperature continues to drop. So we're at 57. So that's a considerable drop in temperature. And it is, oh, actually I was gonna say it might be more challenging to feel the difference, but actually, versus an exothermic reaction, but actually the temperature, it does feel cool. And so, almost cold. And so in order to really feel the drop in temperature, I would suggest holding the beaker the entire time. So we're down to 50, oh, now maybe my hand is warming it up again. So 57 degrees. Okay, so it is an endothermic reaction that is also a chemical change reaction. Okay, now we're gonna do the plaster of Paris, and I'm going to measure out, I think 50 mils of the plaster of Paris and then add in the water. And I've got my temperature here, or my water with my digital thermometer to check the temperature, and it is at 68.2. And this is a 2 to 1 ratio, so 2 portions water and 1 portion, no, I apologize, 2 portions of the plaster of Paris and 1 portion of water. So I'm going to add 50 of plaster of Paris. That would be 25 of water. So I have 50 mils of the plaster of Paris, and now I'm going to add the water, and we want 25 mils of water. Okay, we're ready to add the water in, just checking the temperature, and it's 65.5. Okay, so we're up to 66. So not a significant increase in temperature, but we will watch it as it sets. The temperature didn't go up any further, but it is now time to write up our main lesson book entry. I'm using my main lesson book from a child's dream. This measures 9.5 inches by 12 inches, and I am going to set this up in the main lesson book as a lab report, and then my daughter is going to write this up in her main lesson book. I'm using a variety of color pencils. They're all together in this little color pencil holder, but I'm primarily using our Lyra color pencils. I'm going to title this endothermic reaction, and I am going to set this up as what you would typically see in a lab report, but instead of using a lab book, I am putting this directly into the main lesson book. It's going to be easier to work in a main lesson book rather than working on the chalkboard for this, and this way I can keep all of our entries and my daughter can refer to it as needed to include into her main lesson book. This lab report is not going to have an illustration. I considered doing one, but since we already have an illustration of baking soda and vinegar, I decided to not include one for this one. It would be redundant, and if we're doing a lab report, I don't think it's as necessary. You certainly could include illustrations, especially if you want to show the process, but for this one, we're going to keep it pretty simple. In fact, this entire demonstration and the write-up was very concise, very easy to do, in part because the lab report is very similar to a previous lab report that we did for exothermic reactions, and because our demonstration is one that we've previously done. We did this demonstration in showing chemical change, but it worked out really well for endothermic reactions, and that's why we did it again. With these demonstrations, when I can, I will do the demonstration first to make sure that it goes okay. Then I will do it again for my daughter, and then we may do it a third time in which my daughter is doing the demonstration entirely on her own, checking the procedure either through the write-up that I've done or through one of the other main lesson book resources that we have. And since we're doing this over several days, we have time to let that information settle in so that we can digest it and then bring it up later when we're ready to do the write-up. One thing that there really isn't space to include when we're doing a lab report versus a main lesson book entry is the explanation of the natural phenomena. For the lab report, we are writing out our observations as well as objectives. We're also including the materials and the procedure, but we're not explaining what's happening. For that, we're simply observing and experiencing, but when you have space to write up what is going on, I think that it increases the understanding and the appreciation for the chemical process. This is what the lab report looks like when it's done. It's very simple. It was very quick to do. No illustration for this one at all. I hope that you enjoyed this look at our chemistry demonstration. Don't forget to check out the blog post that accompanies this video for more information as well as other video tutorials for our chemistry demonstrations. You can find the link to that blog post in the description box below. And if you'd like to see how we're homeschooling on a daily basis, you can find me on Instagram and now on TikTok at Pepper and Pine.